Hi guys, we are still reading this book. I'm actually reading this book for you and you listening to. And I realized that yesterday my voice was not recorded, but I'm not actually worrying. We're just gonna continue with a new story today. So let's begin. The story is called The Skylight Room. First, Mrs. Parker would show you the double parlors. You would not dare to interrupt her description of their advantages and of the merits of the gentleman who had occupied them for 8 years. Then you would manage to stammer of four of confession that you were neither a doctor nor a dentist. Mrs. Parker's manner of receiving the admission was such that you could never afterward entertain entertain the same feeling towards your parents, who had neglected to, to train you up in one of the professions that fit Mrs. Parker's parlors. Next, you ascended one flight of stairs. Next, you ascended one flight of stairs and looked at the second floor back at $8. Convinced by her second floor manner that it was worth the $11 that Mr. Tosenberry always paid for it until he left to take charge of his brother's organ plantation in Florida, orange plantation in Florida, near Palm Beach, where Mrs. McIntyre in McIntyre always spent the winters that had the double front room with private bath. You managed to babble that you wanted something still cheaper. If you survived Mrs. Parker's scorn, you were taken to look at Mr. Skidder's large hall room on the third floor. Mr. Skidder's room was not vacant. He wrote plays and smoked cigarettes in in it all day long, but every room hunter was made to visit his room to admire the lambrequins. Lambrequins. After each visit, Mr. Skidder, from the fright caused by possible eviction, would pay something on his rent. Then, then if you still stood on the front on one foot with your hot hand, clutching the three moist dollars in your pocket, and hoarsely proclaimed your hideous and carpal poverty, nevermore would Mrs. Parker be cicerone of yours. She would she would honk loudly the word Clara. She would show you her back and march downstairs. Then Clara, the colored maid, would escort you up the carpeted ladder that served for the fourth flight and show you the skylight room. It occupied 7 by 8 feet of floor space at the middle of the hall. On each side of it was a dark lumber closet or storeroom. In it was an iron cot, a washstand, and a chair. A shelf with the what the dresser. A shelf was the dresser. Its four bare walls seemed to close it upon you like the sides of a coin. Your hand crept, your hand crept to your throat, you grasped, you looked up as form as well, and breathed once more. Through the glass of the little skylight, you saw a square of bubble infinity. $2, sir, Clara would say in her half contemptuous, half tusk tuscaginal half tuscaginal tones. One day, Miss Leeson came hunting for a room. She carried a typewriter made of be lodged around by a much larger lady. She was a very little girl, with eyes and hair that kept on growing after she had stopped, and that always looked as if they were saying, "Goodness me, why didn't you keep up with us?" Mrs. Parker showed her the double parlors. In this closet, she said, one could keep a skeleton or anesthetic or coal. But I'm neither a doctor nor a dentist, said Miss Lisson with a shiver. Mrs. Parker gave her the in- incredulous, pitying, sneering, icy stare that she kept for those who failed or qualified as doctors or dentists, and led the way to the second floor back. $8? said Miss Lisson. Dear me, I'm not I'm not haty I'm not haty if I do look green. I'm just a poor little working girl. Show me something higher and lower. Mr. Skidder jumped and strewed the floor with cigarettes stubs at the rap of on his door. Excuse me, Mr. Skidder, said Mrs. Parker with her demon smile and his pale looks. I didn't know you were here. You were in. I asked the lady to have a look at your lumber queens lumber queens. They are too lovely for anything, said Miss Lissoon, smiling in exactly the way the angels do. After they had gone, Mr. Skidder got very busy erasing the tall, black-haired heroine from his latest unpros- unproduced play, and interesting in and is set and inserting a small, roguish one with heavy, bright hair and vivacious features. Okay. Anna Hell will jump at it. Anna Hell will jump. Anna Held. Anna Held will jump at it, said Mr. Skidder to himself, putting his feet up against the lumber queens, lumber queens, and disappearing in a cloud of smoke like an aerial, aerial cuttlefish. Presently, the toxin call of Clara sounded to the world the state of Miss Lissoon's purse. A dark goblin seized her, mounted a Tegan stairway thrust her into a world with a glimmer of light, and it stopped and muttered the menacing and kabbalistic words. $2. I'll take it, sighed Miss Lissoon, sinking down upon the squeaky iron bed. Every day Miss Lissoon went out to work. At night she brought home papers with handwriting on them and made copies with her typewriter. Something she had no work at night, sometimes she had no work at night, and then she would sit on the steps of the high stop with the other roomers. Miss Lissoon was not intended for a skylight room when the plans were drawn for her creations. She was she was gay-hearted and full of tender, whims, whimsical fancies. Once she let Mr. Skidder read to her 3 acts of his great unpublished comedy, It's No Kid, or The Hair of the Subway. Once she let Mr. Skidder read to her 3 acts of his great unpublished comedy, It's No Kid, or The Hair of the Subway. These are names of those acts, I think. There was there was rejoicing among the gentlemen roomers whenever Miss Lissoon had time to sit on the steps for an hour or two. But Miss Longnecker, that tall blondie who taught in a public school and said, "Well, really?" to everything you said, sat on the top step and sniffed. Then Miss Dore, who shot at the moving docks at Connie every Sunday and worked in the department store, sat on the bottom step and sniffed. Miss Lesoon sat on the middle step, and the men would quickly group around her. Es- Especially Mr. Skidder, who had cast her in his mind for the star part in a private romantic unspoken drama in real life. And especially Mr. Hoover, who was 45, fat, flushed, and foolish. And especially very young Mr. Evans, who set up a hollow cough to induce her to ask him to leave off cigarettes. The men voted her the funniest and jolliest ever, jolliest ever. But the sniffs on the top step and the lower step were implacable. Okay, I'm done with the first part of this story. Should I continue reading this? Yeah, I think I should. I pray you let on the drama halt with chorus stalks on the footlights and drops the ep- Epicyrean tear upon the whiteness of Mr. Hoover. Tune the pipes to the tragedy of Tolo The bane of bulk, the calamity of corp- corpulence. Tried out, Falstaff might have rendered more romance to the tone that would have Rameau's Rickery ribs to the ones. A lover may sigh, but he must not puff. To the train of the momus are the fat man remanded. In vain bits the faithfulness heart above a 52-inch belt. Avaunt, Hoover, 45 flush and foolish, might carry off Helen herself. Hoover 45 flush, foolish and fat is meat of perdition. Is meat for perdition. There was never a chance for you, Hoover. As Mrs. Parker Rumors said thus on the summer's evening, Miss Lissoon looked up into the firmament and cried with her little gay laugh. Laugh. Why, there's Billy Jackson. I can see him for down here too. And looked up, some at the windows of skyscrapers, some casting about an airship. Jackson guided. It's that star, explained Miss Lissoon, pointing with a tiny finger. Not the big one that twinkles, the steady blue on the near, the steady blue one near it. I can see it every night through my skylight. I named it Billy Jackson. Well, really, said Miss Longnecker. I didn't know you were an astronomer, Miss Lissoon. Oh yeah, said the small star guy s- said the small stargazer. I know as much as any of them about the style of sleeves they are going to wear next fall in Mars. Well, really? Said Miss Longnecker. The stars you refer to is Gamma of the constellation Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia. It's nearly of the second magnitude, and its meridian passage is. Oh, said the very young Mr. Evans. I think Billy Jackson is a much better name for it. Same here, said Mr. Hoover loudly, briefing de, briefing defiance to Miss Lognacker. I think Miss Lissoon has just as much right to name stars as any of those old astrologers had. Well, really? Said Miss Longnecker. I would whether it's a shooting star, remarked Miss Dorn. I hit 9 ducks and a rabbit out of 10 of the gallery at Coney Sunday. He doesn't show up every well. He doesn't show up very well from down here, said Miss Lisson. You ought to see him from my room. You know you can see stars even in the daytime the bathroom from the bottom of a well. At night, at night, my room is like a shaft of a coal mine, and it makes Billy Jackson look like its big diamond pin that night fastens her kimono with. There came a time after that when Miss Lissoon brought no formidable, formidable, formidable papers come home to copy. And when she went in the morning instead of working, she went from office to office and let her heart melt away in the drip of cold refusals transmitted through the insolent office boys. This went out. There came an evening when she wearily climbed Mrs. Parker's stoop at the hour when she always returned from her dinner at the restaurant. But she had had no dinner. As she stepped into the hall, Mr. Hoover met her and seized his chance. He asked her marry him, and his fatness hovered about her like an avalanche. She dodged and caught the blows, blow straight. He tried for her hand, and she raised it and smote him weakly in the face. Step by step, she went up, dragging herself by the railing. She passed Mr. Skitter's door as he was red inking a stage direction for Myrtle Delorme, Miss Lisson. In his unaccepted comedy to pirouette across stage from aisle to the side of the count, up the carpeted ladder, up the carpeted ladder, she crawled at last and opened the door of the skylight room. She was too weak to light the lamp or to undress. She fell upon the iron cot, her fragile body scarcely hollowing the worn springs. And in that erebus of room, she slowly raised her heavy eyelids and smiled. For Billy Jackson was shining down on her, calm and, and bright and constant through the skylight. There was no world about her. She was sunk in a pit of blackness, with but that small square of pilot light framing the star that she had no sh- that she has had so whimsically and oh so infectually named so infectually named ineffect ineffe- ineffectually named Mrs. Longnecker must be right. It was Gamma of the constellation Cassiopeia, and not Billy Jackson. And yet she could not let it be Gamma. As she lay on her back, she tried twice to raise her arm. The third time, she got two thin fingers to her lips and blew a kiss out to the black pit of Billy Jackson. Her arm fell back limply. Goodbye, Billy, she murmured faintly. You are millions of miles away, and you won't even tinkle once. twinkle once. But you kept where I could see you moist. You most. But you kept where I could see you most of the time up there when there wasn't anything else but darkness to look at. Didn't you? Millions and millions of miles. Goodbye, Billy Jackson. Clara, the colored maid, found the door locked at 10 the next day, and they forced it open. Vinegar and the slapping of wrists and even burnt feathers, proving that proving of no avail. Someone ran to phone for ambulance. In due time, it backed up to the door with much going, clanging, and the capable young medico in his white linen coat, ready, active, confident, with his smooth face, half debonair, debon, debonair, half grim, then stopped the steps. Ambulance call to 49, he said briefly. What's the trouble? Oh, yes, doctor, sniffed Mrs. Parker, as though her trouble that there should be trouble in the house was the greater. I can't think we can be the matter with her. Nothing we could do would nothing we could do would bring her to. It's a young woman, a Miss Elsie. Yes, Miss Elsie. Less soon. Never before in my house. What room? cried the doctor in a terrible voice, to which Mrs. Parker was a stranger. The Skylight room. It evidently the ambulance doctor was familiar with the location of Skylight rooms. He was going up the stairs four at a time. Mrs. Parker followed slowly, and as her dignity demanded. As her dignity demanded. On the first landing, she met him coming back, briefing the astronomer in his bearing, the astronomer and his arms. He stood and let loose the practiced scalpel of his tongue, not loudly. Gradually, Mrs. Parker crumbled as a stiff garment that slips down from a nail. Ever afterwards, there remained crumples in her mind and body. Sometimes her curious roomers would ask her what the doctor said to her. Let it be, she would answer. If I get, if I can get forgiveness for having heart, it will be satisfied. For having hurt, it will be satisfied. The ambulance physician strode with his burden through the pack of hounds that followed the curiosity chase, and even they fell back along the sidewalk abashed, for his face was that one who bears his own death. They noticed that he didn't lay down upon the bed prepared for it in ambulance, the form that he carried, and all that he said was drive like drive like H1 Wilson to the driver. That is all. That is all. Is the story. In the next morning papers, I saw a little news item, and the last sentence of it may help you, as it helped me, to to weld the incidents together. It recounted the reception into Bellevue Hospital of a young woman who had been removed from number 49 East Street, suffering from debility induced by starvation. It concluded with these words: Dr. William Jackson, the ambulance physician who attended the case, says the patient will recover. Happy end. See you tomorrow with a new story. Thank you guys. Bye.